Okay, let's get started. Um, my presentation, we're going to talk about chatbots for practicing empathy in medical education. So my name's Tracy, and this is for our LTEC class 6250. Here we go. So what I want to talk about today is I'm going to give you an outline about the project and the project idea. I'm going to discuss how chatbots are used for learning. And then I'm going to talk about the 5 skills of empathy that are typically taught within medical education. I'm going to go through the chatbot design, the systemogram, of course, and then come to all of the project goals that we're hoping to get out of this project, then wrap into the implementation plan, evaluation plan, and then talk about next steps. So here we go. So this project originally was discussed actually a few years ago and came to me through a faculty person that we have at our institution. And the individual was interested in creating a chatbot dialogue interaction that would assist in medical students in practicing and repetition for navigating conversations utilizing empathy skills. So, studies have shown that empathy improves the provider-patient relationships through the strengthening of humanistic encounters. So, thereby improving humanistic outcomes. And that's from Fortin of 2019. The chatbot would be created using an AI, artificial intelligence intent framework with a natural language processing or an NLP interface, and is planned to be published both for a web and mobile application. So, backing it up a little bit, let's talk a little bit about chatbots for learning. A scoping review was conducted by Powell et al. In 2021, identifying over 1,300 unique research publications related to the use of conversational agents within medical education. And then Vanchis Vasson in 2021 concluded that the chatbot technology was a valuable learning tool that was designed to provide or can be designed to provide personalized learning and support for students and was, quote, effective according to students' perceived effectiveness and increased research knowledge after their use with the chatbot. Rusin et al. In 2021 identified that chatbots do not need to be truly human, but that the conversations could be rich enough and fluent to engage users in particular complex tasks. So there is some foundational literature behind using chatbots for education. Moving on specifically to empathy. So, empathy expressed by providers within a clinical environment has been directly attributed to a more positive outcome by both the medical provider as well as the patient, and that's according to Hassan Avid in 2022. And then, according to Fortin in 2019, an empathetic conversation between the medical provider and the patient should include these 5 skills here, which are reflection, validation, support, partnership, respect. And when practicing empathy, practitioners should initially reflect on the patient's emotions by identifying the potential emotional barriers that the patient may be communicating, either verbally or non-verbally. The next step is to validate the patient's emotions by normalizing the emotion. And the third step is to express support for the patient's emotions. And the fourth step is to express your partnership in seeking a shared solution for the situation. The last step is to display respect for the patient and their feelings by acknowledging the experience and what they're going through. So let's talk about a little bit about the chatbot framework here. The dialogue flow interface, it's a NLP or a natural language processor platform, and it's designed to integrate conversation into the user interface. It includes 4 elements within the dialogue flow interface. And those elements make up the intent script, which is the overarching component of all of the action. There is a training phase and an action phase, parameters and responses, and that's per Google of 2022. Dialogflow is a Google product. Intents are the various intentions that a user might present when interacting with the chatbot, and that's Greeley 2020. Um, Response intents are prompts that that should respond to the user statement or query, and that's Cusano in 2021. And the image that you have here on the screen just shows a simple breakdown of what an intent might look like. So you have the training phase there in yellow, what the user might say. For this particular project, we're not using the action or the parameter sections of the intent framework, but we're going to jump down to the response thing, and that's what the bot or the chatbot, the predefined script that the bot might say. So to connect the chatbot conversation with the intent structure of dialogue flow, and then to further incorporate the empathy components of a conversation. This worksheet was developed to assist the faculty member, our subject matter expert, in helping to structure conversations. Um, this worksheet utilizes the conversations, current one that you see on the screen here, that was provided as an example in Fortin 2019, and it aligns with the intent structure within the dialogue flow interface. So you can see on the left-hand side of the worksheet, we have the various empathy skills that are required for a good patient-provider conversation. And then we have in the next section over the dialogue flow intent structure, um, the role, who's saying what, so the student, what the student might say, and then what the patient bot or the chatbot's response might be. And so that goes through the conversation that will then be entered into the dialogue flow interface. And that was a worksheet I developed to help the process of putting everything into the interface. So, of course, for this class, we have a systemogram, lots of moving pieces with this one. The development of this type of project would involve multiple departments, stakeholders, software developers, and therefore we've got our systemogram here to kind of show some of those moving pieces. Stakeholders for this project include the subject matter expert or the SME, the project manager, PM, and the students. The SME will develop the educational content that should be included within within the framework, as well as the intents and the responses required for the chatbot to follow. The intents are the chat messages that will be entered by the user, for which is analyzed by the chatbot to determine the intent of the message that the chatbot uses to determine the appropriate reply, and that's per Chen and Yao of 2020. Upon project completion, the SME will interface with the medical students who will evaluate the chatbot and provide insight back to the SME, who will forward the feedback back to the PM, who will then update the chatbot based on the feedback received, and then send the latest version back to the SME to retest on the next cohort of students. So there's a nice kind of checks and balances there to continue to improve the project. So when the SME has completed the development of the educational content and dialogue intents, the research will be sent to the project manager, who will then develop the chat script based on the information that was provided. The project manager will enter the intents into the dialogue flow software, thereby structuring the chatbot conversational script. The project manager will also communicate with the various developers, including the application developer, the natural language processing developer, and the information technology department. The NLP developer will create a script utilizing or will incorporate the script utilizing the Unity design platform to build a bridge between the chat script within Dialogflow interface and the device application, which will be developed by the application developer. And so that's how we're going to get it into the apps and into the websites and pull it out of the Dialogflow interface to allow it to be used on multiple devices. The developer will create the app that will then be accessed via the website interface as well as mobile devices. And then lastly, the university's IT department will locate a suitable server where this project can be stored. And for our IT department, it's really just what's available that will work within the system that we're providing as far as server space goes. So to reiterate, the project itself is going to have, it's going to be developed for mobile devices. It'll be web accessible, and students will be able to add it to their smart home devices, such as Alexa. So that's the plan. As far as cost savings, this was kind of interesting. The average cumulative tuition cost for attending medical school, just overall, when you're done, is about $220,000 if you want to go be a doctor. It has a steady annual increase rise between $6,000 and $10,000, compounding every year. So the more you wait to be a doctor, the more expensive it's going to be. And that's according to Hansen 22. Standardization of patients have been common medical practice in education since 1963. And a simulated patient is commonly an actor who is hired to simulate a patient with a particular medical condition. Um, and that's how they use those actors to help train future doctors. And that's Rosen, 2008. Bosie et al. In 2015 identified that there were a total of about 172 hours that were spent on hiring, training, and employing standardized patient actors who portray these case scenarios for the students. So 172 hours. And this research also identified that approximately $40 per standardized patient encounter per student was passed along to the student tuition costs. So that can get kind of costly, especially as inflation increases. So $40 per encounter, 172 hours, $220,000. I mean, it's crazy. So leveraging the technology with the devices such as chatbots may help to reduce the educational costs, and these costs could potentially be passed down to the student. So cost saving measures. So the overall goals for this particular project, the successful implementation of the chatbot should result in increased student ratings of the OSCE, which is the Objective Standardized Clinical Examination. Those are very important tests that we put the students through before they become doctors. This is basically what's going to tell them if they can. One component of an OSCE is the communication skills assessment, and that's where the chatbot comes in to help the students with that. So the OSCE is a medical examination for students that is used to access learned skills in medical education, and that's Abulektub and Yun in 22, that definition. The OSCE assessment includes the evaluation of empathy skills used by medical students during clinical assessment. So the OSCE is really important, and that's really what we're looking for here is the practice to be able to prepare for the OSCE. So first goal, increase student ratings of communication skills on the OSCE. The second goal is student perceptions. We're going to see if the application had value added to their learning effectiveness in preparation for the OSCE. And then the last one is engagement. So the user analytics reported through dialog flow within the admin interface. We're able to collect user analytics on that. And we're hoping to see that the app was used outside of normal classroom hours. So those are the project goals there. So let's talk about the implementation plan. I'll go through this next few sections kind of quickly because we're getting a little long-winded. So setting for the technology used in the classroom. First year, second year medical students are the target, but really it can be passed on to all sorts of any medical student or even clinicians that might need additional support in this area. The learning technology definition, patient-doctor conversation, likely use of the technology in the setting. It's used as a conversational agent. Goals, we already talked about that. Practical technology use can be used as a practical aid to assist students in their practice of the patient-doctor conversations. Learning technology integration plan, it'll be integrated within the course curriculum that specifically talks about the empathy component. So there's a block of curriculum that talks about empathy and communication skills within the students. Define the number of units needed. I'm down here at the bottom. We will all be using current technology in place, so there is no additional items needed for purchase. How often will it be used? It can be used at any time, but we're really going to focus on that period when the conversational skills will be discussed within the curriculum. Replacement cycle, there's really no technology to be replaced. We'll update the chat script as needed. Resources needed. We will, of course, give and create training tools for all of the folks that will be supporting this project. Instructions within the learning management system will be available to the students, as well as just-in-time training explainer videos for the students as well. And then a short directive or a prompt within the LMS in order to share with students how this is going to be used. No human resources is necessary for this project. Timeline for retraining, we're going to be scheduling meetings, regular meetings with the subject matter expert until the project gets off the ground. And then once it's off the ground, we will just do a touch base probably about every semester to see how things are going. Just-in-time training, I already talked about that. The videos will be housed within the Center of Excellence in Teaching and Learning on their department website. Um, Additional training resources will be reviewed based on user feedback. So let's talk about how did it go? Well, we don't know yet, but let's talk about our evaluation plan. So did it meet the goals? Measurement for the project success will be evaluated based on the goals that we previously discussed. The value of the technology will be reviewed based on potential cost per savings for those individuals that utilized the chatbot. A mixed method survey will be provided post-interaction. So after the students used it, evaluating the perceived effectiveness of the technology, and then we'll also grab the analytics from the dialogue flow to evaluate the effectiveness and the usability of the particular tool. Degree to which the users could use the technologies. The survey will include questions about the operability of the chatbot to identify any issues within the technology. Learning technologies use or system change evaluation. So a small set of questions will be used, about 15, regarding perceived quality of the learning technologies. Adequacy number, we don't need any devices, so not applicable. How often technology is used, dialogue flow analytics will be able to pull that for us so we can evaluate that. Replacement cycle on the technology, really there's no technology purchase here, so it's just a software. Training support resources, additional survey questions will be added. There'll be like 1 or 2 questions, I believe, that are added specifically towards the training resources that were provided. Additional survey questions include identifying the resources to see if it met the needs. Again, no resources needed for or nothing needed for human resources. Timeline survey feedback related to training documentation will be reviewed at the end of the term. So at the end of every semester, we'll review it, see how it went, come back, make changes if we need to. And just-in-time training, we've kind of already talked about that. Evaluation of the technology and training values. So part of the student feedback survey has a few questions related to perceived value of the application. And return on the investment ROI, survey questions related to the value added, analytics. We're going to evaluate all of it and see if it's worth the effort. So next steps on this particular project. The intents that are provided within the worksheet that you saw there are an example of a conversation that was published from Fortin in 2019. So we're going to fill out some other conversational components and then test them within Dialogflow to make sure they're going to work properly. The workshop or the worksheet has been already provided to the subject matter expert for further conversations to be developed, which are patient scripts that need to be put in. And then further research needs to be done to identify how many multiple cases can we put within the program. So one of the challenges I'm currently facing is that I can only put in 1 script, 1 user case at this particular moment, so 1 patient. So I need to get multiple patients in this program, and so trying to troubleshoot and see how that works. Our plan is to go live with this project, hopefully in February 2023. Right now we're on hold, waiting for the subject matter expert to fill out the conversation so we can get some of that and start testing it in there. But our current plan is to go live in February of next year, and then we'll gather student feedback in March. So if you have any questions, there's my email address on the screen. That's my work email. Since it's a work project, it's moret@westernu.edu. Please don't hesitate to reach out. Lots of resources for you here. Big ol' thank you, and that's it from me.